Welcome. My name is Rachel.
My name's Brandon.
And I'm Ashley, and we're Chat Roulette, where we roll and then chat.
Every week we talk about a new topic that's decided on by the roll of a d20 and our rolling table of topics.
And today is nerdy things.
I don't have glasses.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, let's roll!
We're doing the podcast. So, second time's a charm. This is our second time starting this, because our cameras are being dumb. So hopefully this is a visual.
Hey, camera, look at me.
Speaking of nerdy things.
Speaking of nerdy things.
Reformat your SD cards, apparently, if they stop working.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're being funky. Yeah, we're part of the AV club here at Chat Roulette, and we figured it out. And we're nerdy in that way, and hopefully this remains to be a visual podcast, and if it isn't a visual podcast, we're sure going to give you some dynamic visuals this time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Hopefully this is not just an old audio only, because we do like the video portion. I don't know, I enjoy the production.
Truly.
But today we're talking about nerdy things. What does that mean? It means a lot.
So much.
So much. And we were talking about it a lot. I was the one who created the
Initial
topic.
concept.
Yeah, the initial topic concept. And I kept thinking about just girly things, like those Instagram posts. But it's just nerdy things, which is so fun to us. But we had a lengthy debate about all of the things that encompass the word nerdy and like what it means. So we can get into that a little bit.
Well, we were like, what are some things that we would talk about? And each of us was like, here's a laundry list of things that I am a nerd about and that I could go on about for a very long time.
No, truly.
And then we were like, that's going to be a 4-hour podcast. And we said no.
And quite frankly, I'm not editing, nor are you editing, or is Meep editing a 4-hour podcast. So,
absolutely not.
So we've determined that this is probably going to be a repeated topic or a long-standing topic. Like some of the topics are like one-time use, maybe recycled after a long period of time. But like for the most part, that's the majority of them.
Yeah.
This one is not the case. This is a recyclable one. We can throw it in that little recycling bin called our table, and it may pop up again. And so for today, we're gonna focus on in the main cast right here where you are. We're gonna focus on 3 or 4 different umbrella topics, and then in the Patreon we're gonna get maybe a little more niche, a little different, with 3 or 4 different other umbrella topics.
Yeah, I'd say we're sticking pretty mainstream for the main cast.
Yeah,
and then we're going a little bit off the beaten path, maybe a little less
it's a little more
first
loose.
Forethought nerdy things
Yeah.
in the Patreon,
but things that we like nonetheless.
Yeah.
So let's talk. What is a nerd? You know,
it's a little candy.
If I love those little candies.
Sometimes they're on a rope.
I like to think. I think they are mostly citric acid, but I kind of love that.
You have nerds in the cabinet, and every time I go to like move them, they get on the floor. And so when you're like, it's a candy, I'm like,
We have ants.
I mean, we have, but you haven't been there for that. But yeah, I'm sorry about that. We'll maybe throw those out.
That's okay. It's
Ashley,
literally so fine.
Can you hit us with a definition?
I looked this up because why not? But also according to Oxford, not Merriam. Rachel's
love their country,
Press.
love their comma.
I want to shout
God
out
save the
king,
whatever the monarchy
I'll
is.
die on the hill for the Oxford comma.
Oh, same. I love it. And maybe that's something we get into is grammar nerdiness.
One day.
We can recycle it. Okay. A nerd is a person who is extremely underlined, enthusiastic, and knowledgeable about a particular subject, comma, especially one of specialist or niche interest. So yeah, that's a pretty overarching definition. It's pretty freaking broad.
Yeah.
With that, it was really hard to figure out, like, okay, what are our niches, and like, how could we connect them in some semblance so that there's at least a very loose structure of what we talk about. So,
and Yeah, and I think we all focus on different parts of that definition. Like
100%.
I focused on niche. I said I want to be the most fringe nerd about the weirdest topic and be like the expert in this context, which is not always the case in the things that I am nerdy about. Like I'm certainly not an expert about the things that I love that are considered nerdy in some context, but I approached this podcast of being like, what's the weirdest fucking thing I can put out there as something I like?
And mine was like, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Exactly.
I mean, well, I was like, what am I really enthusiastic about? Which is underlined.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like we all could approach it from those three different ways, but I think we're more approaching it as like your twos and that we may eventually go to more niche stuff, especially in the Patreon.
Yeah.
So if you want that niche stuff that you want to dive deep into our souls, go subscribe to our Patreon. It's $5 a month. It's great. And you get cool references in the main cast and what's going on. And it's a little unhinged. So I highly encourage it. It's just extra content every week. Honestly, we're giving a lot.
We laugh a lot.
We're focusing on some umbrella areas of nerdiness. In our first take, we talked about a few different things. The first area, though, is TV.
Mm-hmm.
TV, what does it mean to you?
Television.
The telly.
I mean, you talked about how that was kind of our first, like, mass media that we were able to digest from a very young age.
Yeah. And I know a lot about mass media because I was a communication major in college. And so that was a big topic. Certainly not the topic I focused on, because you could go in different areas of communication. And I was like, mass media, screw that. Although in hindsight, I kind of, maybe would have liked to explore that more. But it was really interesting because they talked about like how over time different mass media forms have been like at the forefront in the psyche of the American public. And that's really exciting. Like, it was cool and interesting. Maybe not exciting, but it was interesting to learn about, like, hey, the newspaper at this time to this time, and how TV has been so prevalent for so long. And they started to, and at the time of me learning in this class, talk about the internet and the World Wide Web and how that was starting to overtake TV. And I think that generationally, more recent generations are more of one versus older generations are the other in terms of like what they might prefer, which is interesting because it's like, even if I think back to my grandparents, they were like, I liked radio plays, and I'm like, that is wild.
Yeah. But very cool.
Very cool. In fact, this is kind of a radio play.
Yeah, in a way.
But we're not doing Shakespeare or like
but
sci-fi.
We are playing.
Yeah.
Come play with us.
Yeah. We're playing with words against each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a very big thing. Like I was very interested in media in college and media studies and all that stuff. And so I was right there in the world with you, learning about those things. And so it's just interesting to think about certain things, especially like the cultural touchstones, like the War of the Worlds cast that happened, which I'm not going to go into, but Google it.
Oh yeah, true. That's
and all these big things about how like, just media changed the world and is currently changing the world, and it's a ride.
I was a music major, so I have no comment on what I learned in boating school. But
eventually,
yeah, I still find it interesting. Like, media's been a forefront of a lot of stuff that I just consume as an American. But yeah, it's just interesting to see like generational changes for sure. Like, that's definitely apparent, like where we were like specifically placed generationally.
Yeah,
I just had a mini stroke. Anyways, yeah, I just think it's interesting because Rachel and I specifically are like cusping two generations.
Yeah, we're right in between, depending on how you cut it off.
I hate it. Because they're like, are you a millennial or a Gen Z? Pick a side. And I'm like, why do I have to pick? Why can't I just be struggling?
I'm just sad.
That too. So
Truly.
like, TV was like the first thing that we were brought up on because we didn't know any better and the internet was still kind of growing. So like, I was a Disney kid.
But at the same time, I'm like, ooh, those 2000s trends, I was deep in it.
100%.
at the same time.
Oh yeah.
I was watching Survivor while also dealing with moon bouncing on my moon shoes. and
we didn't have moon shoes.
I know we didn't have moon shoes. I imagine in my perfect world I had them.
When you were shouting at the wind,
Yes.
you were bouncing in your moon shoes mentally.
Shouting in the wind and bouncing.
Yeah.
I was just dreaming of Heelys, which I never got.
I know,
Anyways,
it's a danger.
Yeah. I was a Disney kid though. Like I remember like I've probably told this story to at least you guys, but I don't know if I remember telling it in the podcast, but if you heard it, great. You're hearing it again. When I was in kindergarten, like the first very formative memory, especially with television, was like it would hit 5 o'clock. And I remember very specifically one day on a Friday, Kim Possible was airing at 5:30. And I said, Dad, you need to come, like, you need to drive as fast as you can because it's a half-hour commute to home from where our school was. And I sprinted to the car. Everyone's like, where are you going? I'm like, my dad is picking me up. I see his car right there. Kim Possible's on. I gotta go. And so, like, I was very much glued to the TV.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Disney really had its marketing plan real strong. Their brand, Chokehold, is great. But yeah, that was kind of the formative stuff. But, you know, that very easily helped me transition to what I'm really nerdy about, which is like adult cartoons in particular. So like Cartoon Network was definitely like a pipeline from Disney to Cartoon Network and their content, and then other cartoons that are found at other places. But like Adventure Time was my bread and butter when I was like in high school and then also in college. That's what I really nerded out about, and it is my favorite TV show, like always. Everyone's like, what's your favorite TV show? I'm like, Adventure Time. Like, I'll watch that anytime, anywhere, any place, with any person, and or just by myself. Like, and it could be literally any episode and I'll be happy with it. So like, it was a really fun show, and I really liked the animation style. I liked the plot, even though it didn't make sense. And sometimes still doesn't, but like, you could quite literally start pretty much anywhere, and you're good for 90% of it. So I'd say it's a really great show. And yeah, that also got me interested in other cartoons like Steven Universe, which is I really enjoyed as an LGBTQIA person, which is really awesome. And they really talk about gender identity and like queer topics and stuff like that. The concept of fusion was like super freaking cool. Oh my god. I could talk about fusion and like my ideas, but also shiny rocks and their people. Like, it's great.
Whoa.
Yeah, if you like gemstones, Steven Universe. So yeah, that was a really nice show to also like switch on in college. My college roommate actually recommended it to me, and then we really got into it. And we were also like in the height of like the Steven Universe hiatuses when I like finished like I think season 2, because they have like really short episodes, but they'll put like release episodes in batches, and or sometimes even a whole season, I think. But then there would be like a 2 or 3 year hiatus where we would hear nothing. And then another batch of episodes came out and everyone freaked out. And so like it's hard for me to sometimes say that I'm a nerd for Steven Universe, because I also know that that community is very,
I would say passionate.
Passionate is a very great word for that. And it can be really intimidating, especially for people who may not have watched it before, and are like wanting to watch it now. But like, it is a really good show, and it is so well written. And Rebecca Sugar, all the props. Like, she's a wonderful musician. She's a great writer. She's a great like concept and like director and producer. It's so good. And she's also worked on Adventure Time for some things. So yeah, it's just a really good show. And so then I also just got really into like regular show. I don't watch that as much, but like that's where the pipeline kind of led to, is like, oh, I definitely want to finish a regular show soon. I haven't found the time to, but it's a good like turn off brain and just watch it. But there's also some weird episodes for sure. And then Bob's Burgers is very similar. So like I got into Bob's Burgers when I was in college. Like anything that helped me, because I was really into crocheting at the time, anything that helped me just turn off my brain and I could just watch while crocheting was really fun. And so that's why I really love adult cartoons and stuff. But
Yeah.
that's my nerdy thing when it comes to television.
Yeah. The adult cartoon.
Adult
pipeline.
cartoon niche. If you put on an adult cartoon show, feel free to let me watch.
But also,
I
like,
will be enamored.
I anticipate that, like, you're not the adult, or at least from my perception. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley. You like adult cartoons that have, like, a little bit of whimsy, not so much the adult cartoons like Family Guy.
Yes, 100%.
Like, we appreciate those,
Certainly.
but, like,
They had their moment.
and that just wasn't quite our
That's just not for me. Like,
Yeah. quite our niche.
and like, I'll watch some of those. Like, South Park, great show. Like,
Sure.
I'll watch some episodes, but like, that's not the area in which I will be like, oh, I can watch this any point in time. Like, I have to kind of be in a certain mind space and in order to really watch those episodes. And like, Family Guy has never been, I've never been the target audience for that, so therefore I never watched it. So
I would say that the number of times that our friend Sam and I have quoted a random Family Guy clip and you've just been like, okay,
Yeah,
is
I'm just-
much higher than the times that you've laughed at what we've been talking about.
I mean, it's funny, like, for sure. And like, if you enjoy that, great, but it's not something
Yeah.
that like I will go out of my way to consume or
Yeah.
like necessarily like feel enjoyment from. So like, that's fine, but like, when I say adult cartoons, it is in a specific niche, I guess.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Yeah.
You're
I
not
would-
meaning like mature humor and
no
Yeah.
themes,
like
but more of just like cartoons that are more tailored
like
towards
young adults,
young adult, older
or,
audience versus like
Yeah, or like even
something else.
because like even some of the shows that she mentioned has mature themes, but I would argue, and this might get me roasted in the comments, and I mean this in the most respectful way, and in the sense of like I also enjoy this on any given day that I'm feeling up for it. I feel like shows like Family Guy or even The Simpsons sometimes, or things in that realm, sometimes are more low-hanging fruit.
Sure.
And like, or like they reach for low-hanging fruit in terms of comedy, which is not a bad thing, just like not my cup of tea all the time. I don't know, I'm the type of person where I also like a lot of the shows you mentioned, but in the sense of like I love cerebral stuff. I'm an analyzer, and I will overanalyze until the day I die, and something that will give me something to hyperfixate on and like unpack is so exciting and like mentally exciting to me. I would be enthusiastic to
Underlined.
do that. Underlined enthusiastic.
And I'm just like, I love when that good little Stewie baby and dog go on road trip together sing song.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Sometimes I need that, and I need to
Yeah.
be reminded that I can do that, but my brain is so excited to be on for the most of my life that
yeah, I
something
think
that's cerebral.
for me, the reason why I'm in that specific niche is very similar in the fact that like it is very cerebral, but it's also really immersive.
Mhm.
Like I really want to get lost in like whatever universe. It can be as simple as the Bob's Burger universe, where it's quite literally like we are just human and we run a burger shop, and like that's fine. But I want to be fully immersed in that, and like I think it's. When it comes to like Family Guy or even like The Simpsons, I don't feel very invested to be immersed in those universes, just because they are focusing on other things. Whereas like Steven Universe is like there's a whole like city and they like go on intergalactic adventures eventually. I'm not gonna get into the plot too much, but like it is 100% like the contingent is like this universe or like this realm in which we're giving plot for has specific things that will make you feel immersed, and that's my bread and butter.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm fully in this right now, and like it's gonna be really hard to pull me back from that, which is why I binge those episodes like way too much. But that's just my addictive tendencies with
Gotta
it.
get in and out.
But I also know that like Brandon, you like other areas of TV.
Yes.
Yeah, like I'll definitely second. Like I like the same types of shows that you're talking about. I haven't seen some of the ones that you do just because I was
Sure.
at a different point. But I definitely had like my heyday with like Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network and
Yeah.
Disney and all those wonderful things.
Like
and
Chalk Zone.
yeah, God, I love Chalk Zone. We'll get into that one day.
Mhm.
But I'll also talk about like even some of the more young adult to adult cartoons like Futurama was definitely up there for me. Like all those same things. Like I think that's just a fantastic one.
Yeah.
But my TV, when I think about like my nerddom and forms of TV, I definitely think more about reality television.
Yeah.
It is a passion of mine. It is like my, if you want to get to know me type thing fact at like functions, I'm like, I am a sucker for trash reality television. If it's a competition reality television show, I will watch it. Like it could be the most uninteresting topic to me in the world, like things I just don't care about, don't know anything about. If someone's getting voted off or someone's getting eliminated every week,
Yeah.
I'm in.
Or
I've
if there's
seen
big
them all.
money stakes.
Yeah, if it's there, I'll do it. And so it's just and I'm fully into all of these avenues, and I've watched literally every show that is a reality show at least once.
Give us like a top 5.
Top five reality shows.
I think so.
Or at least for right now. Like I know that might evolve, but like for right now, top 5, what's on that
I
list?
think so. Well, okay, well, let's go in terms of like what's available. I think consistently Big Brother is my favorite.
Okay.
And I think part of that is because it's on so often. It's on 3 times a week for at least an hour a night.
Oh, that's right. Because I never got into Big Brother, but I know that having talked to you about it, it is on so frequently because it's happening in real time for the most part, which is like crazy. And I also think that's really interesting in the like sense of like, wow, Twitch and like that kind of thing of like live streaming has been so prevalent. And I think that's maybe a testament to
reality TV.
Not even reality TV, but like Big Brother's impact and also its longevity.
Yeah, I think, and it's just the way that we live online, and it works out that like we can also experience these other people's lives online all full time. Like you can pay to watch the live feeds.
Wow.
Which is like 24/7 access minus when they're doing competitions or
that's a lot.
Whenever they do thing. Yeah, and so it's a big commitment. I don't do that. But I remember being much younger, like when the show was in its origins, and my parents were also very into this show. And we paid once for a season where it's like I could at any point in time go back on our family computer to go to this website, and I could click through different cameras and watch these people in this house, and they're just having conversations. So I think that's probably my most consistently my favorite. I will not say it's always the best.
Oh, for sure.
Because I think especially recently, well, not recently, because like the last few I've had fun with. They've had good winners and good themes going on. But like in the years before that, the last several era, I think it was just like a downward spiral with some not great things going on. So it's not always my favorite. I think when Survivor is good, it is the best reality show that exists on television. Sometimes it's not good, and that just depends on how it goes. And
there's so many factors at play.
Yeah, but I mean, I still think that's up there. I love The Amazing Race. It's also not on very often, especially again in the last several years with what's been going on globally. But the last season we had a lot of fun. Rachel and I watched it together, and
it was so fun.
It was a good time.
The twins. Ugh.
Oh yeah, they were cute.
I think they got robbed because of that injury, but I understand.
That's what happens. You get injured.
Yeah, you get injured, and then there's drama, and that's spicy.
So, Big Brother, Survivor,
Amazing Race.
I am a big fan of Top Chef, which is currently on.
Great show.
And I'm not a food person. I'm a very like I got things going on in my brain that don't allow me to enjoy food as much as I would like to. But I really enjoy watching them prepare food. I really enjoy listening to them talk about it. Like they'll be making things. I'm like, oh, that looks incredible. I don't want to eat it, but that looks very cool, and I get what they're going for. So like my conceptual knowledge of food is much more
robust than
my actual interest in eating said food. But it's fine. And then I will say like honorable mention.
Wait, that's
four.
Oh, that's 4. Okay, number 5. I'll say my favorite reality show of all time, which just got a reboot, but I'm not convinced it's going to come back. Is The Mole.
What's The Mole?
So The Mole.
That was recent. Yeah, that's a pretty recent release.
A certain streaming site just had a reboot of a season of The Mole, which is 16 or so contestants, maybe fewer than that, and they are all trying to work together throughout the series to compete in challenges to earn prize money that the winner at the end will take. The secret is that one of these people is the mole, and they are trying to also win money, but for the group, but also commit sabotage and try and make them lose some money throughout without getting caught. And at the end of every week, they take a quiz on like who do they think is the mole, and so they'll ask questions like, did the mole participate in this challenge or this one? Did the mole have red or white wine at dinner, and you have to be, so it's like super observant, low key, and like my favorite part of it is that as an audience member, you also don't know who the mole is.
That is crazy.
So you're constantly watching along with these people being like, oh, and then you see people go home and you're like, oh.
That is a wild concept.
Yeah. So it was on way back in the early, like, or in the mid 2000s or early 2000s, and Anderson Cooper was the host, which was fantastic.
Interesting.
And it was just so good. They had like 3 regular seasons and then 2 celebrity seasons, which the celebrity seasons are currently available on a streaming site, and I did rewatch them. But I've rewatched that series several times because I just think it's so clever and it's so fun.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, so it's really worth it. The new one is also worth a watch, but there's a lot of issues. I think they're trying to figure it out, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then honorable mention, I would say like singing competitions had their heyday.
Yeah.
I'm not into them now.
No.
Like my parents will still watch like The Voice and American Idol,
Masked Singer.
Masked Singer, and every once in a while my mom will be like, I know you don't really watch this, but here, check out this, and she'll send me like a video of like one of these people who sings like a really good song. I'm like, that's great. But American Idol used to be the one.
Oh, true. I remember that.
I went to every American Idol tour concert for the first 7 to 8 seasons of that show.
What?
I have seen every American Idol
7
winner for the
to
first 7 to 8
8?
seasons. Yeah.
That's
Sponsored
a lot.
by, their shows are sponsored by Pop-Tarts, and we would go to those concerts. I was like 10 rows away from Kelly Clarkson in her debut.
I love that.
Oh
Like,
my God.
I've seen her in concert 4 times since, but like it was there. Like I've seen every single winner at least one
See,
time.
I just
plus the
remember
cast.
some of the seasons.
Kelly
and some of
Pickler?
the-
Yeah,
I
Wow.
remember Kelly
didn't
Pickler.
win, but yeah,
She was a
I remember. Here's who I
she
remember
grew.
should
from.
have.
She's good. Yeah,
Here's who I remember from American Idol from the seasons that I watched.
sure,
Kelly Pickler, David Archuleta. which
absolutely.
I also think his name. I associate his name with artichokes.
Yeah.
He was gray haired. I just remember
Taylor
his
Hicks.
look. Taylor Hicks and the other gal, McPhee.
Catherine McPhee.
Catherine McPhee, and I always associated her with Nanny McPhee because I was young.
Yeah.
And I
How
was like,
about Chris Daughtry?
Shout out,
oh my
love
God.
him,
Yeah.
very
Chris
talented.
Daughtry. Wow.
Was on The Masked Singer, got 2nd place.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, that's right.
Should have won.
Should have won.
No shade to Wayne
Adam-
Brady, but
Adam Lambert.
icon.
Adam Lambert.
Currently
An
fronting
icon.
for Queen.
I know. Wild. Those are the main ones I remember from the
Yeah.
seasons I watched.
But I have like this weird, almost like, I wouldn't say it's encyclopedic because I don't remember everything, but again, very niche, very enthusiastic knowledge about reality television where a lot of people end up being like figureheads in multiple series or multiple shows.
Oh my God, literally.
And I am constantly like a person who I will text my parents because they also, again, watch these shows and be like, do you recognize so-and-so?
So, and I'll give an example of this because I experienced this firsthand, especially when we watched Amazing Race. So we watched one of the most recent Amazing Races, which if you're watching this later on in life, this is the season where there were 2 twins, and like in terms of the top 3 groups, there were
Spoiler alert.
there was a set of twins who were separated at birth and came back together, and this show was their bonding moment
That's a lot.
to like get
That's
to know
cool.
each other.
That's
It
a
was
lot of
wild.
pressure.
They got in. One of them got injured, and that's why they didn't win. But I
Aw.
genuinely think that if they were not injured for the
They had a
last
really good
half,
chance of
they
winning.
could have won.
They still,
Um,
never mind.
Yeah.
No
and-
spoilers.
no spoilers. But and then there was like a couple, traditional like heterosexual couple, and they were really strong players. But the people who did the best, did really really well in this show were 2 contestants of Big Brother.
Yep.
Okay, and they are together. They are in a relationship. And they went from Big Brother to this show, and I think they may have done other stuff too. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, yes. I don't think. No, she didn't. But he did. But yeah, no. They on the same season Big Brother. They were not together on Big Brother. At least not outwardly. Like they were obviously like vibing and stuff. But then after the show wrapped, shortly after they announced that they were dating, which was very exciting. And then, as a lot of them do now, Big Brother alumni went on the show called The Challenge on MTV. And
The challenge.
and Derek, the guy's name, Derek was one of the people who went on the challenge and then subsequently lost pretty quickly, just how it goes. But then
They
both of
went
them,
on an
Derek
Amazing
and Claire,
Race.
went on the Amazing Race together. And so I was like, to Rachel, I was like, listen,
Yeah.
let me break down this flow chart of how they're connected and what happened to them and how they're going through.
And
So,
see, this is the difference of our nerddom. I enjoy the shows. I think they're great. And I think they're good, and I have some memories too, but I'm not as like invested in maybe encyclopedic as you described. But when I told them, when Brandon told me about this dynamic, I was like, I could not care less.
Yeah.
And also, I don't like them. Like, as someone who's like that third party, I'm like,
yeah,
they weren't my favorite as like an outsider who didn't have that context. But I understand why you might like them as like a dynamic if you do have that context. Not to say that they weren't bad contestants; they were far worse contestants in general. But like,
they were, a random person. They're probably not gonna be their fave, but to me, it was like instantly I wanted them to do well because I had like that connection of watching them for 60 days in Big Brother. So
yeah.
What TV shows do you like, Rachel?
I mean, I feel like you all have encompassed a lot of shows that I like. And I do want to make it a point that, like, a lot of our nerddom also has a lot of fandom in it as well.
Yes.
So, like, I think those two things kind of merge together because of that enthusiasm part. Is that oftentimes if you're a nerd in that way, or, like, if you associate your nerdiness with something, you're probably also a fan in some capacity. Or a lot of capacity.
Yeah.
So in terms of like TV, the umbrella category, love adult cartoons. I guess one I would add to maybe something that we like more recently is Legends of Vox Machina, which gets into some of the other categories as well. But like it is, even if you're not a D&D person or like into like tabletop gaming in any capacity, watch it if you can. A genuinely very good story. And something I will say with most of the things that I enjoy in terms of these categories, oftentimes they deal with storytelling and they involve a lot of lore that I can be immersed in, or like I will analyze. Like I said, I'm an analyzer. And another area of like TV in general that I think does this really well sometimes is anime. I freaking love some. I'm not the biggest like anime person, so like I can't list like 10 different shows that I've watched in depth and be like, these are super niche and things like that. But let me tell you, the amount of time I have spent on a Demon Slayer wiki is insane. And the fact that I know more about the like manga about the show and how it's not fully caught up yet, and a new season's about to come out, and I've been trying to convince these two to come and watch it with me because
we're working on it.
We're working on it. There's like a list of shows that we have. We have like a media watching day every week, and we're watching My Hero Academia.
We're watching that. We're watching Survivor, because that's currently out. We'll also incorporate maybe like some YouTube videos, but then we also watch Critical Role.
Yeah, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's so good. Like anime is so good.
I was gonna say I'll add the number of times like we've been watching any show really that we have kind of a shared interest, but especially in your niche area. And you will just like whip out your phone or whip out like your iPad and be like, I need to do some reading. And like the show will be playing and you'll be like, I need to know more about that thing they just said real quick. And then like do a deep dive.
Because I want to know what's going on. I'm like, I want the lore. And like the second Demon Slayer said, hey, we've got some lore, the different Hashira. And I'm like, oh, what does that mean? Who's that person's father from this thing? And why are they really? Who's your daddy? Who's the evil guy? What are they looking for? Why are they doing that? Like, I want to know, because like, but also I don't want to spoil it too much. Yeah. So like, I have to be really careful because I want enough where I am excited and gonna continue to watch, but also not too much where I'm like, well, it's gonna wrap up pretty soon.
Yeah.
That's like me when I see somebody with a quirk in My Hero Academia, which we're watching, and I'm like, but what's their quirk? And they're like, you'll find out like literally in 5 minutes. And I'm like, but I need to know now. And then I look it up and spoil it for myself. But I'm okay with it because I consented to that.
Yeah. So sometimes you'll be like, oh, they're pretty cool. And I'm like, they are for an episode, huh? And then they will be gone.
Yeah. And that's the thing is Brandon and I have watched a little more anime than Ashley has. Yeah. I also, like I said, I'm not the biggest anime watcher.
Same.
Like we have some friends like John, and I know some other people from grad school who have maybe a wider variety or a deeper connection to it. So I don't want to like say I'm an expert in this. I want to be very clear. There are still some shows that I like have heard really good things. Like I know Naruto is a big one for a lot of people. I have not watched a single episode of Naruto. Sure. My connections are like Studio Ghibli, Demon Slayer, and My Hero Academia are the main three. I've done some other ones, like some smaller ones, like Devil's Part Timer.
Mhm.
That one's so fun, so irreverent.
Death
and
Note?
I have not.
Oh, I thought you did Death Note.
Mm-mm. Yeah, like some of
alright.
the main ones that I'm like, I really should do that at some point. I haven't done.
We'll add it to the list.
Death Note, Hunter x Hunter,
Very good. I love that one.
Jujutsu Kaisen.
Very good.
I had a roommate who was really into.
I really want to watch an anime called Tuba Euphonium.
I don't know
Oh,
what that is.
It's a music anime.
Great.
oh, another.
Oh, we should watch Carol and Tuesday.
Oh, Carol and Tuesday
Sure.
is really good.
It's
You
a
would
music
enjoy
thing
it.
as well. You'd love it.
I have watched Carol and Tuesday.
Yeah, I love that show.
What are some other ones? So like I
Full Metal Alchemist.
have not done Full Metal
I
Alchemist.
know, and I've seen it like 7 times.
My roommates in grad school watched a lot more anime than me and like had a better connection because they knew Naruto, and Naruto is such a commitment. It's
like 1,000
so
episodes.
many episodes.
If you want to watch all of them.
yeah,
There's a ton of filler. You do not have to watch 1,000
No,
episodes,
there's
and I
some- there's
definitely
some-
encourage you not to unless you're just like super into it.
yeah. There's
but
some guides that are like, here's a different
skip
path.
episodes 64
Yeah.
through 173. and you're
But
like, great.
Wow.
but I know that they watched things like Hunter x Hunter. They watched Jujutsu Kaisen. They watched Seven Deadly Sins. And like I would pick up on some episode because they'd be watching it in the house, and I was the one who had the TV, so it was in the living room, and I'd be like, I'm hanging out because I don't know what to do right now, and I'd catch up on like lore, and I'm like, that sounds really interesting, and I will want to get into that. Oh, another one. So there's a couple of other ones I haven't mentioned. The first more backdated one for me is Ouran Host Club.
Oh, yeah.
That one's a fun one. It's
Mhm.
it's a little. I love a good action.
Yeah.
A little action anime. But the Ouran Host Club is not that, and I think it's equally really good.
Isn't
gotta-
that with the sound words? Wow.
I
No, I don't think so.
Could be.
It could be. I don't know. I can't remember.
Ouran Host
We'll look it
Club
up.
is great because it's silly.
You want to know your favorite anime that you've never watched?
Huh.
Yuri on Ice.
Yeah.
The theme
Yeah.
song slaps.
The Yuri on Ice is like another one. I also watched SAO.
Oh, yeah, I did too.
Sword Art Online.
Back in the
and
day, yeah.
Let me tell you, not appropriate for kids.
Certainly not.
Not at all.
Some
in
weird-
fact,
weird
very
things going on.
In fact, very uncomfortable at various points.
Yeah. Weird stuff happening in that one
yeah.
at points, but
But yeah, it is really cool and really interesting. Yeah, and I just enjoy it, and I think that comes from like
that comes from the adult cartoon pipeline to then
well,
anime.
it's partially that, but I also remember very formatively when we were very young, before we could form lucid thoughts.
before you came to consciousness.
Yeah, I didn't have an ego yet.
Yeah.
But we had a summer vacation. We would occasionally summer vacation at our grandparents' house in Arkansas. They had a lake house, and that was their retirement home, and they were really cool. And we would also have like family reunions there because it was a pretty big space.
I know where this is going.
And one of our cousins, really cool people. Our cousins are really cool on that small pocket of our family. They are also into D&D, and the cousin that I'm thinking about is like a firefighter. It's like into, he's like really cool. Like
Cool.
he's like in the wilderness doing like really dangerous stuff. And I'm like, that is wild. You are so brave. And 07. Keeping the land safe. But he brought a Studio Ghibli film to the house. And it was Howl's Moving Castle. And that is how we watched Howl's Moving Castle for the first time. I had no idea what was
It's
going
my
on.
favorite anime.
And he was like, I just want to watch it because it's a really good film. And I
No,
think
it
was
is my favorite.
I think it was award winning at the time.
It was
and
so
that's
good.
The only reason that our grandmother, who is like very traditional, or who was very traditional, like would watch it.
Yeah.
I think I cried
Yeah,
watching that.
because it's sad.
I was really young. I was like,
and
this
I was
is
like,
so
I was
sad.
just so enamored by it. And I had seen on Cartoon Network occasionally at the late night viewings that Spirited Away was on, but I never watched it in full. To
Yeah.
this day, I have never watched it in full.
Oh
I
my
know you
God,
weren't there
it's
when we
so
watched it one
No,
time.
I wasn't, and I
Yeah.
mention it.
It's so good.
But I have seen the majority of it, and I understand the plot. But yeah, it's Ghibli is that pipeline for me.
Nice.
It was really cool. Yeah. And that's why whenever I talk about anime, I specifically also really love stunning animation. It's like, yes, I love lore and
love
that
being
helps.
immersed.
really go into it, but there's some animes on my list, anime movies in particular, that I want to watch because the animation is so
It just looks
good.
Yeah.
It looks so good that I don't even care what the plot is.
Yeah.
It could be the crappiest plot on the planet, but I want to like cry because the like effects and the lighting and the way stuff moves is so smooth and like maybe not realistic, but just innovative, and that's really exciting. Like one of the ones that I want to watch is Weathering with You. There's a new one with the door. I don't know what it's called, but there's a new one where doors are a main thing. And I've seen the
Monsters Inc.
yeah, it is kind of giving Monsters Inc. vibes, but it's like I'll have to look it up, and it's just.
So yeah, we can go into a couple other topics. I think because we're running low on time, I think we'll kind of lump two together, which is mainly gaming.
Gaming.
And gaming.
And gaming.
If you don't know what we're talking about,
to be board games, video games, TTRPGs, which is a reason why we made the podcast. Hey, I love Critical Role. I'm wearing things. You can see my socks, maybe. But yeah, like I don't know where we want to start here, but you know,
we've
we're
talked
gamers.
We've talked about our introduction to gaming before, so I don't think we need to go too far into history.
And that's on the Patreon. So if you're like, hey, I want to go more into depth about the history of like these people and like where they started, go check that out because it gives an introduction to this podcast and like reasoning and that kind of thing, which we talked about it briefly in the main episodes, but like it goes way more in depth on Patreon.
Yeah, but I think we can kind of jump into the same vein of like when we're thinking about the nerdy things of gaming, whatever type of gaming that is, like what kind of jumped into your mind as like your fringe moment or your like maybe formative or more niche thing or something enthusiastic.
My thing was like I always ended up like watching games more than playing them because like when you have a twin sister and you only share one console, there's gonna be an unequal balance.
Somebody gotta be player one.
Somebody's gotta be player one and somebody's gotta be player two. So like I never really would have called myself a gamer in childhood. I definitely, once I gained more independence and like could afford buying like a Nintendo Switch by myself, then I was like, yeah, I'm really into video games, but I was very much a casual gamer. Like I enjoy like Animal Crossing. I love The Sims.
Yeah.
Oh my god. If Lil Simsy ever watches this, I love your content and your builds, and I aspire. I will spend hours just making like creative builds and using like specific cheats like debug, alt placing, bb.move objects, all of those things, so that way I make an immaculate house that I use once and then never again.
Yep.
So like that's what I did most of the time because there was no player 2. It was just there's only one player. This is the time that I have. I'm going to spend ample amounts of time doing absolutely nothing that I can forget about. Like that was what my gaming experience was in childhood, and that's what I really enjoy is that like casual gaming where I can like come back to it if I want to, or I can completely scrap it and like also be totally fine. So yeah, that's what I really enjoyed.
Yeah. What about you, Brandon?
I've always played video games. I think that's where like my mind goes. I think like other types of gaming are still more new to me. Like I think when board gaming and kind of TTRPGs came into like the zeitgeist of my life, I was definitely a little older.
Yeah.
But I think video gaming has always been around. Like I was very fortunate to have like Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis and like some of these older consoles all the way up through more modern ones. But I think that really took off for me like when I was in like middle school when, you know, Kingdom Hearts dropped. And then so that was like the first one where I was like, oh, this is like this is the genre. Like this is the thing that I enjoy.
This is the blueprint.
And so from then I started exploring a lot more. Like I'd picked up Final Fantasy games before, but I was way too young to be like really invested in them.
Yeah.
And so like I would like rent them from the store and play them for like an hour and be like, Mom, I have no idea what's happening. She'd be like, me neither. And then we would take it back and I'd get something else.
Very good.
Yeah. And so, but then when Kingdom Hearts happened, that was more accessible to me. And I was also I was older and able to dive in, which then really led me down that train of RPGs. And so I started picking up other Final Fantasy games and other more action RPGs and more things like that and kind of just really diving into them. I'll never forget this one guy I will never forget him. I do not remember his name,
Uh-huh.
but we were in school together and I was like talking about the same thing. I was like, yeah, video games. I want to play some of these. And I was playing other ones. And he was like, oh, well, I have Final Fantasy X if you want to borrow it. And I was like, sure. And so he brought it and he bought the guide and was like, he was like, yeah, here, just sometime, just like, give it back before school ends. And I was like, before the school year ends. And I was like, okay. He ended up moving suddenly.
Oops.
So my original copy of Final Fantasy X and the guide that I have for it, his. No idea where he is
Incredible.
this
Sorry,
day.
buddy. If
Don't
you're
know.
watching.
Yeah, you were just gone. I don't know who you are. I could not find you if I wanted to, but it was stuff like that would happen where I would do that. And then I also got into MMORPGs of the Final Fantasy nature, where I was playing Final Fantasy 11 from the time I was like 15 to 23, playing it pretty consistently, and I'll still play it every once in a while. And then Final Fantasy 14 dropped, and I dove right into that and took out for a while, and now I'm back in it. So like
We're back in it.
Well,
it goes.
Yeah, I guess my question for you is like, what part or parts about RPGs is most exciting to you?
I think the part that I really enjoy is that I get to build a character the way that I want to, and like grow with them, and then have that kind of reflect the journey versus like first person shooters, which I am not good at, where it's just like it is based on me as a skill set, utilizing the weaponry that I have to be better than others. I'm typically not going to be better than other people.
Yeah.
Like it's just not going to happen. So therefore it's not as fun for me.
Right.
Because it's just like I'm losing all the time versus like, Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy, where like you have kind of these kind of set paths that you go through. But you have a little bit of customization of what you want to do with that. And then also it is just like me versus the game trying to do better. And like that was a lot of fun for me to like challenge that. The puzzle aspect is fine.
Yeah.
But really it's just like that growth and that story that exists from it. And I'd say like definitely as I got older and more into games, like I still think RPGs are kind of like my very niche genre that I'm into.
The cornerstone.
But the definition of that like has also changed a bit to where it's like I'm definitely into more like narrative pieces to play.
Yes.
Like I would argue probably like the Telltale games and stuff like that are not like RPGs technically.
But they're narrative gameplay.
But they're narrative gameplay
primarily,
and
which
you
is
do kind of encampass a character as they go through a journey, and like that I'm into. So like the Walking Dead series of Telltale, I think
Very
is
good.
fantastic.
makes fun of me for not high-fiving Duck.
You got to high five Duck, otherwise you get the bad ending.
Is that true?
Yeah, and
didn't know
it's not. Unfortunately, the same outcome happens to Duck no matter what happens. Maybe he lives. Maybe he's the winner. But you should high five Duck because he helps you. He's the greatest duck detective of all. And but the games like that, I think The Last of Us and Last of Us 2 are masterpieces. And it's probably like those are what I list typically as like my favorite like of that genre where you get to be what it is. I think they're so good. But then you also have games like Tomb Raider and Uncharted that I would consider more in the action RPG area that I also really enjoy.
That are also phenomenal.
Yeah. God of War,
God of War is a good
2018 and
one.
God of War Ragnarok, I really enjoy. Like, just it's like all those types of like narrative, but also build your character type games that I really, really love and dive
What
into.
about you, Rachel?
I mean, there's like 3 or 4 different aspects of games that I really enjoy. You've mentioned a couple, and I've mentioned a couple in general. Like the reason I like anime is because of story and lore, and like games do the same thing. A lot of games do the same thing. I got into Legend of Zelda because there is a lore, and it's
a big old lore book you can buy. It's
right?
like,
And there's a big old lore book, and the general plot of it is nearly the same for every game. But like the lore that you could get into it, that's what got me into gaming first. And like, and same thing with other things like Skyrim or I don't know, Final Fantasy right now for sure, which is comical because I never would have opened up an MMORPG since I opened up Wizards 101 as a kid because I was like, there's wizards. But like I haven't I haven't done a ton of MMORPGs in that way, but like there's exciting lore there. And so I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I like RPGs in a similar way of like creating a character and like in a way of like exploring different storylines or attributes or hey, I want to make a character who's completely different than me or something that's completely in line with what I might do.
Yep.
Those are really exciting. I think that is a testament also to tabletop gaming. It's like for example, we're gonna be playing D&D later, and it's like later today, which is so exciting. I haven't played in person in a really long time. And,
Same.
And I'll get to that. Something about it, tabletop gaming and like tabletop RPGs where you have a lot of like storytelling in that way is really exciting to me because you get to explore things that you never would have outside unless you actually did some of those things, right? Like if I didn't have a character that was a white man who likes to drink beer and swings a sword, I would never understand like the challenges that he might encounter in my life, right? Like, or that kind of thing. Or in different ways.
It's also just a nice way of like, I say immersion, but also like escapism is really my goal because it's like my life is kind of boring. Like when I talk about it, like in some aspects, not very exciting, not very interesting, but like, can I tell you all about this adventure that we created together? And like we did role play and then we fought all these freaking monsters that like only you can think of. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like I'd rather talk about that than like what I did in boating school or like what I did today at work. Went. Yeah, like there's some interesting stuff at like work, maybe. Depends on the day, but like sometimes there's just like not a lot that happens today. What my day-to-day usually is. So like I really that's what I really like about.
Yeah. And so like those are two things. Then there's like two other things in terms of like open world games and like not like very linear games, which I like both. In open world, the reason I like open world is because you have the autonomy of choices. Yeah. And I'm like, I love choices.
Yeah.
I love to explore what choices will do and like decision trees and that kind of like area of life. I think some game like in just, that kind of realm. You can do some of that decision tree making in linear games too.
Certainly.
Like Undertale's a great one in that
Detroit
way.
Become Human.
Detroit Become Human. That like it's a linear game for the most part. And I think that's exciting depending on how devs approach that.
Yep.
And then in linear games, like they typically incorporate some of the other things that I mentioned, where there's like lore or something else. So I think for the most part, linear games are harder for me to invest myself in if they don't have some of those other components. Yeah. But I think a more recent revelation about like my gaming experience and maybe why I like tabletop gaming a little more nowadays is the aspect of like relationship building in our lives. Like I think, as you kind of mentioned, as a kid and as like a younger adult, a lot of gaming would be single player. Or not connected to really anyone else. It's a very personal experience, which is not a bad thing. I still enjoy those things. But I'm at a point in my life where, as an adult, it sometimes is harder to come by those moments when you can connect with other people about other things or like make new friends or build on the like have newness and have like still have the stuff that you have in a really like the thing I learned in boating school in communication with like interpersonal relationship is just like there's dynamics that you encounter at any given time. And some of those dynamics might include like a need for newness and excitement and something
or
that's
like
coming
and
variety, but then also the need to have consistency at the same time. And I think tabletop gaming or gaming in general gives that consistency, but then the like actual game or things that you're doing together or like the format gives that newness. If that makes sense. And with tabletop gaming, you also get that in real time with each other a lot more often. You can do that in virtual environments and things like that. I think that's a really exciting thing about the internet nowadays. But I think I would be remiss to say that I don't enjoy the presence of other people
Yeah.
in real time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's partially COVID talking. I think that's partially, you know, my personal bias. I love that we have Discord and, you know, Zoom and things like that to interface online, because a lot of the people I know are not in the same space as me. But it does, like, when I get to see those people in person, it's really different.
I think there's a big thing to be said for collaborative gaming and collaborative experiences as well too, and like that's something that I really appreciate about TTRPGs that we play is because I'm competitive by nature. Like if I'm here, I'm here to win typically. Like I come to fuck around. Like but also at the same time, I equally want my friends to win and do well. And so I constantly have that battle where people are like, oh, in this game you can screw them over. And that's fully a mechanic that you can do. And so I never take it personally if it happens.
Yeah.
But also I have a harder time doing that because I would just much rather play a game where we collectively win.
Yeah.
And so for TTRPGs, I think prototypically it is this collective group of, you know, people who are going out to kind of reach their own goals, but also have an ultimate goal in mind where they come together and win. And so that collaborative aspect, I don't get typically in my life. Like my work day is very independent. My every job I've had, I've been pretty much on my own, working on things. You know, I have colleagues and stuff, but like I am the main driver of what I do. And so it's like having these communal aspects where it's like we are collectively working together. Harkens back to me for like couch co-op and harkens back to me for like other things. I think that's why I love TTRPG so much. I think that's why I love escape rooms so much. And it's just like all of those aspects together.
Yeah,
of, like,
I mean that's
teaming.
basically like what that's what I think I really needed when I started getting into TTRPGs, cuz like I was a musician and like that was also when like we started to have a lot of things that were remote and like I was very much used to like I am in a community at all times, which has its own like pros and cons, which I can get to at a later period in time, but with COVID and stuff like that, I had no real way to like connect with that community again because it had to be in person. There was no way of really getting around that. Like even finishing out my music degree, like there were some things that just got omitted from like what was graded or like what was acceptable for me to complete my degree program. And it actually took me longer to graduate because of it. So like there was nothing that really kind of filled that need for a sense of community, but also just like relationship building, but also like just something that will also like let me be more social and like have a collective goal and like be collaborative in that way. And TTRPGs helped me do that. Even if it was virtual, I was still, you know, going on an adventure with people, and like I was still an equally important member of like people that were in person and or, you know, some people that were hybrid or whatever worked for them. And so like that was what kind of helped fill that gap. And as a person who doesn't really, you know, work too much in terms of like the field of music anymore, like that has kind of helped me heal in some certain ways, because like I definitely feel bad many times throughout like living in the fact that like I'm not exercising that sense of community through music anymore, and that's okay. But like it's hard for me to sometimes grapple with, so like stuff like gaming TTRPGs help me kind of combat those feelings. So like that's what's really nice, and I really am excited to play D&D. And I also like there have been stints of time where like I can't play D&D because I'm working or like I'm going through life transitions, and so like that's also where like Critical Role has really helped. And just like yes, there is community like within that, and like nerd culture in general helps kind of also fill that gap too. So like that's what's really cool about being a nerd. And that's all I have to say about that.
And it's like, because of all the reasons I mentioned of like the lore aspects, the decision tree kind of things, the collaborative nature and that kind of thing, like like in my life, kind of like you mentioned, I interact with a lot of people in my day-to-day work, as does Ashley. But I think the nature of that doesn't scratch those itches.
Right.
Like I don't get to like the periods in which like I have very short meetings and it's like I can't talk about all of these really deep things or explore a ton of different things, and oftentimes those meetings look pretty identical.
Yep.
Not all the time, but certainly there's some common stuff that happens every time. And so that's really really hard to manage, and so being able to do those other like or at least touch on those things of like collaboration and long form content or like long conversation or like that kind of thing is really really exciting.
Just long lasting like senses of like connection with others and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think is what helps us kind of cope with our day to day, because like Rachel mentioned, like some things are very surface level, and like that's okay because it's just a job. But like,
well, also surface level is needed to get to the deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, but you know, that's also what helped kind of build nerd culture in general, as it's like kind of formed and changed over time, which is really cool. And I think that's a cool commonality that we can kind of bring and conclude with.
And I also like I like both consuming those kinds of things that, you know, as well as doing them.
Yeah.
100%.
You know what I mean? Like I love DMing. I love being a player. I also love just watching other people do it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I love being player 2 sometimes, but I also need to be player 1. And I have been player 1.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to be God.
Sometimes I want to be God.
Yeah.
And
That's me when I play The Sims. Sometimes I'm God and I drown all my Sims in the pool.
Yeah, I'm very let me tell you, I have been using a lot of my spare time to make if we end up having a longer form campaign to spin off into a different.
I think we'll find a way.
I think we will. It just might look different depending on how we go. But I think it's exciting nonetheless.
But yeah, that kind of encapsulates a lot of nerd culture. I know that was only like 2 overarching topics, but like
we have more.
We have so many more. Nerd culture is so deep and expansive.
Yep.
It's really hard to encapsulate in just one episode. So like I'm sure we can encourage you to just get into your own niches, or, you know, explore some of ours if you're interested, or, you know, just, you know, do whatever you want. You're an adult, or maybe you're not. I don't know. You're a human. Yeah.
Be a nerd.
Be a nerd.
Be a nerd.
It's cool.
Because honestly, it has a lot of really cool, like, depending on what you need and what you want and, like, how to have fun and, like, all that kind of thing, there's a thing for you. As we've kind of, like, we've talked about, like, the concepts and things that we look for in nerdy things and fandoms and things like that. But, like, if there's something that's opposite that we've described that you think you might need, like, let's talk about it. Talk about it in the comments.
Plenty of stuff out there.
Yeah. Tell me about why your knitting nerdness is really cool. Maybe you like to knit. Or maybe you like to, maybe you know a lot about a topic in real life. Like, I know a lot about rocks. Tell me why that's interesting to you. Maybe rocks have a lot of
I love
hey,
rocks.
if you're a geology major, tell me why you're a geology major
Also,
and
Help
why
us
you like
learn
rocks.
more about digging holes.
True.
Also, like, aside. This is my last aside before we do the
What's
wrap up for today. Do you think science is just a way of explaining the world's lore?
Yeah, 100%.
That's crazy.
Sorry to not riff on that more with funny things, but just
Yeah, but that's just wild.
Anyways, I think that'll do it for the main episode. Let's go ahead and go through with the D4 wrap up.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the D4 wrap up, we always roll a D6 to see who's gonna speak. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I believe.
And for audio listeners,
Nope.
I'm
No.
it's 1, 2. Oh wait, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
There's a table. Put it
We
right
got it.
here.
There's a
I
table.
made it.
And for audio listeners who can't read the table, Ashley is 1 and 2, Rachel is 3 or 4, Brandon is 5 or 6.
Yeah, and then after that, we'll see about the wrap up with a D4 roll. So go ahead and roll a D6 for me, Rachel.
Oh, okay. Oh wait, D6. This is what it looks like for our visual people. Is being rolled right now. Ready? 1, 2, 3. That is a 2, my friends.
Ashley's leading.
Ashley's leading.
All right, so then I gotta roll a D4 for me.
Okay, so
to see how I'm wrapping up.
the D4. It looks like this. It's metallic. It's very sharp.
Shiny.
Whoop. That is a 2.
Which means
What
a
does it
fun
say?
fact or anecdote.
Yeah, tell us about a fun fact.
Did you know that you can woohoo in multiple places in The Sims? Woohoo means, you know, getting it on, doing the deed,
The Devil's
get nasty.
Tango?
Devil's Tango. Some new places that actually have been included with the new Sims Get Together expansion pack,
Ooh.
which I did buy, is a treehouse. You can also not in the expansion packs, but just in general, you can woohoo in bed. You can also woohoo in a telescope, like an observatory tower.
In the telescope.
Yeah, You can
Going
also
in a direction.
woohoo in the hot tub.
In
You
the
can
shower.
can't do it in the shower, unfortunately.
Probably good for safety reasons.
Yeah.
I don't think they've incorporated that yet.
Well,
Although
it's
they
slippery in
probably
there.
could. It does. And you could do it in the closet though. So like that's kind of.
I sure did.
Did it in the closet, did it out of the
Anyways,
closet.
so yeah, that's your fun fact for the day.
Okay, but like if you woohoo in the treehouse, do you think you get a lot of splinters?
Actually, yes, that is a mechanic.
Oh!
I tried that out with The Sims. If you woohoo in the treehouse, your sim will get a condition where they're like unhappy or uncomfortable, and it's because they got splinters in the treehouse.
Yikes.
I tried that with my Sims because they were trying for a baby, and it worked. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
I guess you could argue the baby is the splinter.
Yeah, I sure would.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all we got. We do have the next topic for the next episode, so we're gonna go ahead
Yes.
and roll D20 for that.
The topic list. This is the
That's
D20.
not it.
Fuck. Sorry,
Yeah,
I pulled up
first
the
one.
wrong table. But this is the D20. It's this lovely blue and green guy. Here it is. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
What is that?
It's a 16.
I was gonna say 15. 16 is conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy.
Okay, so we're gonna share our favorite conspiracy theories.
Maybe we'll
and
get some
stuff like that.
tinfoil hats.
That'd be kind of fun.
I have tinfoil.
I'll make a tinfoil,
We have tinfoil,
golf
too.
hat. That's like a visor.
I'm gonna make a tinfoil fishing cap.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna make a fez.
Ooh, I'll make a fedora.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, you'll catch us on the next episode. You can find us though on all social media at chat_Rollette. But you can also subscribe, follow us on Patreon, all the stuff. And we will see you next time with some conspiracy theories. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye.
Bye.